and it is my privilege to introduce our first performance before we have the blessing of Where We Stand by Miss Beth Roach. But first, before I make the announcement, I just want to thank the organizations and the individuals and all the people across the Commonwealth have made this event possible, have brought us all together to stand up for environmental justice in all the communities, the directly impacted communities that are leading the fight against unnecessary, unneeded, dangerous, deadly fossil fuel projects. Poor People's Campaign, Friends of Buckingham, Yogaville, Environmental Solutions, the people of Union Hill, people of Bent Mountain, and all the communities leading the fight against the pipelines. This would not be possible without their leadership, their advocacy, and their incredible work. And it will continue. Without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce our first performance, all the way from California, a longtime environmental activist, a minister, and a beautiful musician, Mr. Stephen Fisk.
This is a song derived from the civil rights movement, but we're changing it because we don't want the pipeline. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. Get your dirty hands off our land. Ain't gonna let no pipeline turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let no pipeline turn us around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. Get your dirty hands off our land. Corporate greed ain't gonna let no corporate greed turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let no corporate greed turn us around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. Get your dirty hands off our land. Injustice ain't gonna let no injustice turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let no injustice turn us around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. Get your dirty hands off our land. Now this next part comes from a Native American song. I circle around the boundaries of the earth. I circle around the boundaries of the earth. Wearing my long tail feathers as I fly, wearing my long tail feathers as I fly. Wind in my wings, lifting me high. Above the ground, where the wind is the only sound. High above the trees, riding on the breeze. Looking down, 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 what do I see? Koyaanisqatsi, Koyaanisqatsi. It's a Navajo word, and it means out of balance. But we know different. I am one with the earth and sun, forever and ever and ever. I am one with the earth and sun, forever and ever and ever. We are the weavers, we are the woven one. We are the dreamers, we are the dreams. We are the ocean, we are the drops of rain. We are the rivers, we are the streams. I am one with the earth and sun, forever and ever and ever. Can you sing it? I am one with the earth and sun, forever and ever and ever. all sharing this world, seeking peace and harmony. Seeking peace and harmony. I am one with the earth and sun, forever and ever and ever. I am one with the earth and sun, forever and ever and ever. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. Get your dirty hands off our land. Ain't gonna let no injustice turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let no injustice turn us around. Gonna keep on walking, keep on talking. Get your dirty hands off our land. We want you to get your dirty hands off our land. Get your dirty hands off our land.
Stephen Fisk, everybody.
Yase Beth Roach. I'm a tribal councilwoman of the Nottoway Indian Tribe of Virginia. It's an honor to be here with you all. And first, I'd like to say words in our prayer. And we're going to start with Yogweri Huodase Ekwe Hekwe. Yogweri Huodase Ekwe Hekwe. Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Awesome. Closer? All right, good. Ekwe Hekwe. So we're giving our thanks and we're acknowledging and being so grateful for the people of this land. And so when I say these words, I think about our Monacan brothers and sisters to the west. And I think about our Algonquian-speaking nations to the east. So Pamunkey, Mattapanai, Chickahominy, Rappahannock, Petawomack, Nansman. I think about my own people, the Nottoway, the Meherrin, the Tuscarora, the Skururi, Katunwaga, down to the south. And I'll even go as far down to our coastal plain territories where we have the Hiowa Saponi, the Okanichi, the Kahari, the Lumbee, and more Skururi, Katunwaga territories, and the Cherokee to the west. So the Gurui Huodase Ekwe Hekwe. So first we give thanks to the people. Next, let's give thanks to Gurui Huodase Ine Ahon Roch. So Mother Earth, the land that we're standing on. Gurui Huodase Ine Ahon Roch. And Yogweri Huodase Awe. Water. So we're giving our deep, great thanks for the water, the land, and the people. I'm so honored to be here with you all today. And the prayer goes on and on. And we've closed the prayer as we're saying that we've all come together in one mind. So one, yeah, and I don't expect you to say that one. I've had to practice that over and over again. So deep Nawe, thanks for being on this land today. It's so beautiful to see you all. Nawe, and to close Onwe, and so I hope we all live.
And I'm from Buckingham in the Union Grove, Union Hills section. Your pipeline brings on endless death. We need a lifeline to bring on precious rest. We need clean air and water to survive in this land, and not a compressor by no command. Why don't you use your head for what is right and your eyes to see the light? Your money may be great for the cause. Listen to this, then by and by it won't be the boss.
Fascinated. Thank God for this great crowd that's here. I'm Pastor Paul Wilson of the Union Hill Community, Union Grove Missionary Baptist Church. Thank God. See so many new faces that you're here of a concern. Steve, right? Yeah. When you sung that song, you told the whole reason why we're here. All of those verses, that's why we're here because we're concerned about not only the Union Hill area, but we're concerned about what happens to our communities when these big businesses come in and try to run roughshod over people, because it's all about the dollar. It's about economics for these folks. So we thank God that you're here, and we have a great day planned. I'm excited. We've been on this road for about 5 years now. I am now a committed environmentalist. Amen. As a committed pastor. But I'm just glad to see that you're here. I have 2 more minutes. With all this crowd, I'm ready to take a text. Come on and give a sermon and call for the unsaved. But we're here. Now listen, what I want to encourage you to meet people, find out where they're from. I want to encourage you to build some bridges, some coalitions with some people here. And there are a lot of people that I have seen for these last 5 years. Some of you I'll see tomorrow in Northern Virginia if it's God's will. And it's very important because we have some political folk, people who are running for public office. You need to know who they are and support them because they're here with us. Their concerns are the same as ours. And if you're not in that district but you know someone who's there, call them. Encourage them that these are some people that you need to really look at. And so this is a great day planned. God is smiling on us because the weather is perfect. It's not too hot. And so we're just going to have a great time and just continue to be with us. You looking good? Yeah! Feeling fine. So that means you're on your way to heaven.
One more time for Pastor Paul Wilson. Planet, and we are honored to have them marching with us today. And moving on with our program, I'd like to introduce B.J. Brown to the stand as we continue our program and getting close to the march.
We are Union Hill. I know my cerulean wobbler is out there somewhere. And I sing for my creature who's endangered because of the pipeline devastation. And when given this creature to sing for, I decided to write an original song. I went to some land that was being destroyed. And as I stood, I'll share with you what I sung. I am one with creation. And creation is one with me. I am the sun that shines, the wind that blows and whistles through the trees. 'Cause I am one with creation. And creation is one with me. I am the river that flows as billows roll in the sea. 'Cause we are one with creation. And creation is one with us. I am one with creation. And creation is one with me. We are one.
I am bringing my creative efforts not to song, but to science and actually the written word. And because I'm an anthropologist and we're very wordy, I'm going to rely on the written word, so I'll just stay in my time. We gather today to march ride, and roll in solidarity with Native American, African American, Mountain Appalachian, and coastal urban peoples. All are the environmental justice communities that are unjustly, unequally threatened by toxic harms of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Whether by heartbreaking stress and anxiety as they witness their communities fractured by Dominion, or now face the destruction of their water, soil, heritage, and livelihoods by EQT, we march to say, no more! No more! As Martin Luther King said, thank you, Martin Luther King, in every way, we must build dikes of courage to hold back the flood of fear. This march is just one of those dikes. We cross this historic bridge, symbol of the Confederacy, symbol of 1968 and today, of restoring justice. Restoring justice to the descendants of the First Native peoples whose ancestral ground lies beneath us, above us, and all around us. Restoring justice to the descendants of those enslaved in Virginia, first North American site of the Atlantic slave trade. 2, benefit the colonizers and enslavers. Their histories were then and are now systematically erased.
Yes.
To destroy their rights to this land, to their full self-determination, their identities, their property rights, and access to justice. In Union Hill, where descendants of Monacan and formerly enslaved people of African descent built a freedmen community under military law, arsonists burnt the courthouse on the night that former slaves were given the right to vote, the night the 15th Amendment was passed.
Yes.
They were planning to use those records in that courthouse to sue for restitution by the 2-to-1 majority African American males in that county. In 2015, Dominion filed an Atlantic Coast Pipeline that completely and totally erased every single person in Union Hill and their entire history, non-existence. This is where my spiritual path meets my scientific path and knowledge. We did a door-to-door community study to put this to the lie, to populate and give history to and witness to the people who actually live there. As MLK said, a lie cannot live. So we stood up, and so many of the people here, and I saw some members of Virginia Student Environmental Coalition, Ruby, yay! They went door to door, painstakingly, with a whole questionnaire. This was not a census survey. You stayed there, you listened, you learned. And that is the basis of all the evidence we have for the environmental justice of Union Hill and why Southern Environmental Law Center is suing on our behalf the DEQ and the Air Board. And Stephen Metz, who counteracted the lying by maps that were done by Dominion and DEQ. They found that Dominion and DEQ, using their work, had actually erased, pretended that didn't exist, the EJ screening that they used to counter our research. They took off the first page of every single one of 11 reports that found that this is an environmental justice community. So, lying. So, that it's 83% minority, we found in our study, and as did these external reviewers. Because, as MLK said, oh, sorry, I already said that. It's worth repeating that there were 500% more people living there. And they said there were 70% white, it's 83% African American. The lives have been temporarily triumphant, but they're not going to stand. On that this, we say that we meet them with the unarmed truth. And together we follow what Martin Luther King said again. It doesn't matter what ship your ancestors came in on. Now we're all in the same boat.
Follow me, follow me.
Okay, follow Dave.
really dangerous explosive pipeline, we have also been cited for the only compressor station for the entire state of Virginia. For those of you who don't know, I think many of you do, compressor stations are really dangerous pieces of infrastructure. They emit dangerous, awful, health-destroying emissions 24/7, every single day. They're noisy. You don't want to be near them. I don't know about you, but my home is the place I retreat to. It's my sacred place. Imagine if this was going to happen to you and you no longer had a sacred place, but what I just described to live with. The APC starts in the fracking lands of West Virginia, and it snakes down through Virginia and into North Carolina, where it ends up in indigenous land there. This is no mistake. But this is one very abbreviated story. There are so many with all these pipelines. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, and the Southside Connector, which has not been mentioned here. It runs through a neighborhood of low-income folks near to schools. These are all wrong. Very, very wrong. People and resources are suffering. And right now, along the MVP, people are really suffering because they're building. And there is violation after violation, and no one is doing much of anything, those we've entrusted to do that. I'd really like to encourage you. We have several folks here from West Virginia whose land has been desecrated. Already they're cutting or have destroyed it. Please hold up your hands. Maury Johnson in the back. And Neil. Where's Neil? Hold up your hand. Go meet with Neil and Maury and have them tell you their stories. But we have to come out of the dark of despair, even how hopeless it might seem, because it is then that we rise from all of this oppression and this unjust greed and the abuse of our human rights. So I'm going to just end with a quote from a beautiful chant I heard the other day on YouTube. You can look it up, the Ulele Women. And they say, together, brothers and sisters, idle no more. Get active, please. There's people with clipboards here. Go sign up for something. Do something. We don't have any more time. We'll get into climate justice a bit later. But now I'd like to introduce Andrew Tyler, who is going to give an Indigenous prayer. This will be followed by the faith leaders who are joining together in interfaith spirit. And they'll be doing a version of Hallelujah that is Leonard Cohen, so don't get thrown off. Just kind of listen along and go along with them. And at the end, there will be a moment of silence. Thank you.
What other version is there?
Ngapo chama. Kati mokwa ti kati. Ahatan nuskara koaks. Ahom. What's going? What's going? I greet you, friends, in the language of my people. You may have heard this at some point during the day, but for those of you who have missed the memo, you are standing on indigenous land right now. And in case you also didn't know, we indigenous people are still here. You know, we gather here to talk about environmental racism and environmental justice, but I want to tell you that this is not a new concept for us. We have been fighting environmental racism since the first boats came from Europe 500 plus years ago, and we are still fighting for our way of life. And it's good to stand with so many people who are recognizing that the original people of this land are still here. And We have not had our mandate from the Creator taken from us, even though our lands have been taken from us.
We stand with you.
I offer this sacrament to the earth for the ancestors that gave so much so that I can stand here as an indigenous man today. I give the sacrament to all of the people who are struggling to maintain their identity, and to all the people that are helping us along the way to do that. And finally, I give sacrament today to the generations yet to come. And I give thanks to Ahom, Boskonia Ahom, all my relations. I'm going to come to the grass to give the sacrament.
I'm Queen Shabazz of the Virginia Environmental Justice Collaborative, United Parents Against Lead. I would greet you in the native language of my people, but my language and culture has been stripped from me. I am going to pour libations and continue pouring the libations as the rest of the faith leaders speak. Yes, we call upon the ancient African ancestors and the indomitable spirit to bless this day, this gathering, this march. We seek your guidance and protection. We use cool water which holds the essence of life to nourish our souls. We give thanks for the motherland, our Kubalan, the cradle of civilization. We pour in remembrance of our struggle and all those who have struggled on our behalf. We cast our libation to the north, the south, the east, and the west. I would ask you to call upon those ancestors' names and remember those whose names have been lost to us. Ashe, please call out your ancestors and ask that they be with us on this day and guide us and protect us. Ashe. 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 Let it be so.
And with each other, to bring new life to the land, to restore the water, to refresh the air.
We join with the earth and with each other. To renew the forests, to care for the plants, to protect the creatures. We join with the earth and with each other.
To celebrate the seas, to rejoice the sunlight, to sing the song of the stars.
We join with the earth and with each other.
To live in the present, to renew our spirits, to promote the health and well-being of all.
We join with the earth and with each other.
To create the human community, to promote justice and peace, to remember our children.
We join with the earth and with each other.
We join together as many and diverse expressions of one loving mystery for the healing of the earth and the renewal of all life.
We join with the earth and with each other.
Again, we call upon the ancient African ancestors and the indomitable spirit to bless this gathering, this day, this march. We seek your guidance and protection as we say no to all those infractions upon us and our communities. Let it be so. Ashe.
Hallelujah. You probably know the melody. We're all going to sing it together, and then there's these different words representative of the different faiths that we all honor, our oneness and spirit. And we're going to end in silence. Thank you. Hallelujah. 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 Jesus Christ, Christ the Lord. Jesus Christ, Christ the Lord. Amen. Mother Mary, full of grace. Mother Mary, full of grace. Amen. Ekam Draga, Sadanam. Ekam Draga, Sadanam is one. Wakam Tanga, Wakam Tanga, Wakam Tanga, Great Spirit of the air. China Gay, China Gay, China Gay, on your clean, holy one. Allah, As-salam, Allah, As-salam, God is peace. Almighty Padme Hum, Almighty Padme Hum, Almighty Padme Hum, Almighty Padme compassion. Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om. Earth and soil, sun and water, air and moonlight, earth our home, earth our home. Peace and justice, peace and justice, peace and justice, peace and justice for all. Hallelujah, everybody. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
to sort of discuss a little bit about the MVP and some of the stuff that's going on in southwestern Virginia and how it's affecting my community of Bent Mountain specifically, as well as some of the other affected communities of along the MVP line. So I'm from Bent Mountain. I grew up there, lived most of my life there, and it's a beautiful place. It definitely should not be turned into an industrial wasteland for someone out of state to benefit from. These past 4 years on the mountain, I have seen a lot of stuff. But what I haven't seen, my neighbors, my family, people I've known all my life have experienced a lot of stuff, and we've seen a lot of stuff. But what we haven't seen is anything that gives me any kind of confidence that we have been listened to or had our voices heard. Mostly what I've seen is Governor Northam, Mark Herring, DEQ David Paler bending over backwards, letting regulations be steamrolled, ignoring citizens, and letting the MVP get away with whatever it wants. Some of the things that I've seen, some of the things that we were promised was that this pipeline was going to be built through the strictest regulations and through the highest standards. Instead, what I've seen is erosion and sediments into creeks all the way to Smith Mountain Lakes. I've seen pipeline floating and rusting in water-filled ditches that has been there for almost a year. You can go up right now and see those pipes rusting in the water. And I've seen all kinds of, they say they're going to build these standards. Those standards have been ignored. They haven't addressed the steep slopes of Poor Mountain, which are comparable to the terrain, if not steeper, that caused the explosion of the Trans-Canadian pipeline last June. That was just a few months into operation. All these snake oil salesmen and corporate mouthpieces promised a lot of stuff, a lot of jobs, but I've only seen fleets of out-of-state workers who have actually jeered and been rude to the landowners who are having to witness their own property being destroyed and crying themselves to sleep. All along the way, the MVP has cut corners, even to the point, and this is something that we all can do, and I would like you folks here to help out. There are still lots of regulations that they haven't crossed their T's and dotted their I's, including they have not properly assessed the impacts to any of the endangered species along the route, including the Roanoke log perch, which is important to the Roanoke River. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife is asking for information that should have been considered but was ignored. So please join myself, Delegate Sam Razul, and sign and send the postcards to get our senators to petition FERC to do their job. Now one thing that I have seen, and I see right now, is how much more unified everybody for both of these pipelines are becoming. There's more people here than there was last year and the year before that. One thing that I know that they are counting on, the governor is counting on, that all the other politicians at FERC is counting on, that we will eventually go away and we will get tired of this fight. But we ain't gonna go anywhere. We are going to continue to fight and raise our voices for Bent Mountain, for Union Hill, for Franklin County, Giles County, Nelson County, for our homes. We are the ones who live here. This is our home, not the MVP's home, not the ACP's home, not their CEOs, not their investors. We are the citizens. We will continue to watch, monitor, report them, and resist for the rest of our lives until we are heard. We ain't gonna never go anywhere.
I'll take you to the river, tell you what I see. I see the truth in the water, shining back up to me. Everything in time, since the world began, feel it breathing in the air, feel it buried in rain. I'll take you to the, tell you what I hear. I hear the minion in the distance, I hear the chains say a prayer. Here come that company man, here come that big machine, here come the murder of the mountain, here come the in-between. I'll take you to the river, I'll take you to the truth. Living life is a water running through you. What are you gonna hold
moved to Union Hill Road about 22 years ago. Now we find that we're just at the feet of the ACP pipeline and less than a quarter of a mile from the compressor station, proposed compressor station. What a sinking feeling we've had the last 4 years. When we think that we gave up, well, what we gave up was okay, but we came here to have clean water, fresh air, beautiful environment, resources, and above all, people we love and who love us also. When I say union, you say hill. 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 Union hill. You're all now members of Union Hill. God bless you. What an opportunity today for us to be with each other. What an opportunity to meet so many who have supported us and worked for our cause, environmental justice. What an opportunity to share my experience, to share the impact of Dominion, the impact that Dominion Energy has had on our lives already. Waking up at 6:30 in the morning to logs being felled right next door to where you live without anyone telling you that was happening, what would you think? Well, you thought the world was coming to an end. And it basically felt that way when you found out that it was Dominion taking down the trees in the forest all around you that you had thought so beautiful. But today is an opportunity for us to stand strong, to meet, and to strengthen our common bond. Maybe this event will be our opportunity to lean on God every step of the way. He's allowed us to do our part. Now we need to let him have his way. We now have a mindset for pressing forward in spite of setbacks. Sometimes we think that we are above and we need to protect our families from the slaughter of this world. But it's not entirely true. Our Father God, as written in Proverbs 90, says he will cover us with his wings. Our enjoyment of the pristine environment, clean air, clean well water, fresh springs, frees us as we are being challenged. With the support of our organizers, Friends of Buckingham, we are so happy to be here. We pledge to do whatever we can, to take it to the courts, to take it to the streets, and we must also remember to leave the rest of it to the perfect judge. He will take it up further. We need to continue with love, and we need to recognize you, every one of you who've worked so hard, who've done so much. I applaud you and let you know how much I love you. We can never recompense you for what you've done. Union Hill is better, or will be better in the long run. It will stand for far more than what Dominion thinks it will. Thank you so much.
I now live, and I like that area because of the quietness and plenty of green trees, vegetation, creeks, springs, natural beauty, and history. It's a historical area. The area really was built by freedmen from the slave. They were.
You need to hold it.
Wasn't fun doing that.
Yeah, hold it.
My grandfather, I grew up on my grandfather's farm. He was one of the freedmen. Thank you. This is better. And it was a farm. We had animals. And we still breathe that clean, fresh air, natural water, springs. And I've become used to that. I left home at 19 years of age because the military wanted me. And I had no choice, but nevertheless, after the military, remained in California for an additional 35 years and then returned because I like those rolling hills in Union Hill community. And all went well until I received notice that the Board of Supervisors was voting on this monster for a special use permit for a proposed compressor station. Frack gas on top of that. We learned the details later. But this thing is a monster. It came in illegally. They didn't listen to us. We spoke at the board in opposition. We spoke at different hearings. Our voice was not heard. The history of the community was ignored. And as well as the culture of the area, population was lied about. In other words, everything was erased for the purpose of bringing in this proposed compressor station. So the entire idea was a lie for industry. I like this community, but it seems to be the trend now to return to this fossil fuel. It must be the end of it, but they want to bring it back to life. But this is the age of renewable energy, and regardless of what 45th say, renewable energy has to come forth. This fossil fuel has to go out. We want to breathe. If we are stewards of God's creation, enough damage has been done to our universe, and to our ozone, and to our waters, and to our land. You can look around and see. We can tell by the changing of the season. And last year, 2018, we had our 4th hottest summer. We can't stand much more of that. We won't be able to grow our food. And whatever amount of money we come up with, still won't be enough to survive. And that'll be a warning to us. And our water, we depend on underground water source. Unless that's contaminated with this monster, which it will be, then we won't be able to have water. And water is life. So, thank you.
Water is life!
I was asked to say a few words about the historic march, the Poor People's Campaign that was across the Lee Bridge, which we're kind of commemorating. I think it was about 51 years ago. So I just want to contextualize that, and also, since we're talking about Union Hill and environmental racism, also add a little bit of a racial context, and then I want to say some stuff about solidarity. Because one of our speakers, Rebecca Keel, she is sick, so she's not here. So I'm going to try to incorporate a little bit of what her themes were as well. So I just wanted to start off just by kind of conceptualizing the Poor People's Campaign a little bit historically. A lot of times, the narrative that you will sometimes hear is kind of the Poor People's Campaign is focused kind of just resolutely on poverty and economic inequality, which is incredibly important, but it's also important to think about the volume was too high. And so, I'm sorry, it's also important to think about the moment that it represents in terms of Martin Luther King and some of his politics, and also the public representation of Martin Luther King. Because in addition to focusing on economic empowerment and also looking at the civil rights movement, one of the things that Martin Luther King said about the civil rights movement in reference to the Poor People's Campaign was that it hadn't quite dealt with the issue of systemic poverty. That was one thing. And there was also kind of a marked shift in his rhetoric around race and racial inequality. He becomes, for example, very critical of Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society program, in which Lyndon B. Johnson declares a war against poverty. And one of Martin Luther King's big critiques of that was that there was so much of our national funding was going towards funding militarism and the Vietnam War. That was something that becomes more prominent in the way that MLK is talking around this time period. He also begins making more historical references to the relationship between the U.S. government and African Americans. And around this time, one of the things about the Poor People's March is that it also included what was called a mule train, which started in Mississippi. And I want to talk a little bit about the significance of that mule train relationship to what Dr. King was focusing on. So some of you all probably heard like 40 acres and a mule. You've maybe heard that term around before. One thing that's really important is that towards the end of the Civil War, General William T. Sherman and some other politicians, they are getting together and thinking about how to provide reparations for freed African Americans. One of the ideas was that you would break up the plantations, and these plantations, 40 acres would go to each freed slave, and they'd also get a mule. So there was this whole idea. The whole idea of reparations is actually not really new, and Dr. King begins talking about the broken promise of the U.S. government to African Americans, but also to poor Americans in general, and we've heard this over and over again, how so many of our decisions that get made today, especially decisions that are supposed to be made in the name of the people and being made in terms of representative government, having real representation that represents the interests of people who put you in power, etc. So much of it is controlled by very powerful money interests. And one thing I think that's important to think about when we think about the People's Campaign is all of the different intersecting issues that Dr. King and others were highlighting with that. To talk about not just the idea of expanding rights, but also addressing historical inequalities, broken promises, and unifying people around common ground. So one of the sort of the series of actions that is associated with the Poor People's Campaign, a big part of it involved multiple marches in multiple cities that were headed towards Washington, D.C. And the idea was to erect like a resurrection city where you would have people engaged in what Dr. King was calling for militant, nonviolent action. And they would actually occupy the nation's capital in these tent cities and pressure elected officials, public leaders, etc., to address problems of systemic racism, poverty, hunger, and also the war economy. And so today, when we think about the history of that particular movement and the history of different intersecting struggles, I think that's why Union Hill is so important, and Union Hill's relationship to things like environmental racism. And because I only have a few minutes, I can't go into the entire history, but the concept of environmental racism really begins in the rural South and rural Southern African American communities that are being disproportionately impacted by toxic technologies, by toxic waste. And in Warren County, North Carolina, there's a huge movement that basically organizes around a hazardous waste facility. This movement attracts the attention of civil rights leaders, of the NAACP, and it galvanizes a larger movement in this very tiny rural town where the environmental movement, ideas of the environmental movement, and the rhetoric, the tactic, the strategies of the civil rights movement are kind of brought together. And so, and one thing I've noticed a lot about Union Hill is some of the parallels that it has with the very beginnings of struggles against environmental racism, but ultimately those struggles also expanded to become environmental justice and recognizing general social inequalities, the relationship between social inequality and the experience of environmental degradation, environmental insults, etc. And so Union Hill represents not just that single historic Black freedmen community, but also an entire toxic, destructive infrastructure of a pipeline system, which is part of a larger destructive form of development that's been going on for years in terms of hyper investment into natural gas infrastructure and very aggressive efforts to try to install that infrastructure so they can basically prolong it. But today, I wanted to focus on, I know I was asked to primarily speak about the 1968 March, and we addressed that. So because the main focus is Union Hill, I just wanted to just think about not just about Union Hill, but also how so many different struggles intersect at Union Hill, involving pipelines, pollution, civil rights, oppression, racial oppression, economic oppression. There's a lot of really amazing people that are here, and the diversity of the group is really the strength of the group. So I think as we go forward, and I also to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Travis Williams. I teach sociology at VCU. I teach classes on environment and society. But just to focus on common ground and also to respect unique, distinct histories at the same time. I think it's totally possible to do both of those things. And the strength that I see today here, the energy that I really feel today here, is because of how many different groups are together and how much solidarity there is across difference, while also respecting that difference as well. So I wanted to close really with just a message of solidarity. That was also something that I know Rebecca Keel wanted to say more about. So really appreciate that, embrace it, and just understand that so much of our power and strength comes from unifying and appreciating and respecting our distinctions and differences at the same time.